Welcome to more World of Warplanes content from the Noble Queue. This video is a full review of the Tier 7 reward and future premium Japanese bomber, the Mitsubishi G4M2. Hello there. Here is the G4M2 bomber, codenamed Betty by the Allies, on the tarmac outside my hangar. It's the first Japanese bomber in the game, and if you're watching in August 2024, this plane is the reward, assuming you complete a chain of combat missions, for Wargaming's 26th birthday. This is a later model of the original G4M aircraft that became the Imperial Japanese Navy's primary land-based bomber of World War II. Along with the earlier G3M bomber, this plane delivered the attacks on the Royal Navy battleship HMS Prince of Wales and battlecruiser HMS Repulse that sunk both and marked, though it may not have been realised immediately, the arrival of air power as the decisive factor in future sea battles. The G4M2 entered service in 1943 and featured various improvements over the original model, including different engines, improved armament, and in the case of the Model 24 variant, which the World of Warplanes team has chosen for the game, bulged bomb bay doors to give greater bomb capacity. I suppose those are the bulges there. In the game, the World of Warplanes team has remained faithful to the powerful defensive armament, but may have taken license with the bomb load, as it's a configuration I couldn't find the Japanese Navy ever employing. The team has also made it quite a slow beast. Let's take a look at the numbers. Here is a spreadsheet showing all of the Tier 7 bombers, just the 4 of them, with the G4M2 being shown in columns C and D. If you don't know how the spreadsheet works, there's a link in the description below to a video that will explain that. Have a watch of it and then come back here. For the purposes of these comparisons, the configuration of the planes is stock, ordnance is mounted, well, it wouldn't be much of a bomber without bombs, equipment has been removed, the pilot has been sent back to the barracks, and the modules are all the top ones. Starting with the armament, technically the G4M2 has no forward-firing guns, even though it actually boasts a 7.7mm nose gun. Only the Tu-2 has a forward-firing weapon as far as the game is concerned. The defensive armament looks impressive, with 3 7.7mm machine guns and 2 20mm cannons being listed, with a whopping 720 cumulative damage, and an excellent range of nearly 2,800 feet. Of course, that cumulative damage would only be the case if you could hit a target with all the guns at once, which you can't. The best you will do, probably, is get 2 on target, though that includes getting both 20mm cannons on target. I've popped in an image of where I think the armament is, just above, so you can see where the guns are. The damage per second of the 20mm cannons is 240, so if you get both on target at the same time, that's an impressive 480 DPS. I found that tricky to do consistently. The 7.7mm machine guns have 80 DPS, so if you get the top turret and one of the waist guns on target, you have 320 DPS, which is still good. The G4M2 has pretty big blind spots either side of the tail, so you're better using pitch up rather than yawing from side to side to try to get the 2 20mm cannons on target. But you can shoot effectively with the top turret to the side of the plane, though you may need to dip the wing to do it, and you can also shoot anything above you. I haven't yet familiarised myself with all of the shooting angles, but they're quite extensive. And that's just as well because, as you'll see in a moment, you're not going to outrun many planes. As a specialised plane with a reinforcement or tank build, you can demolish Tier 6 fighters and probably take care of Tier 7 fighters, but Tier 8 fighters won't have a problem shooting the G4M2 down. Tier 6 heavies can be disposed of, though you may take considerable damage, and Tier 7 heavies will probably shoot you down before you shoot them down, though they will take heavy damage as well. Whilst you're flying the plane stock, you won't last as long in the air, and you may find that frustrating. The ordnance is, to all intents and purposes, the same as that for the Tu-2. That is, there's a small payload, but it reloads quickly. The World of Warplanes team originally proposed to have the bombs do 4,400 damage each, but after testing they increased it to 5,000 per bomb, fortunately. There is, as you would expect, an equipment slot for the outboard weapons, so if you wish you can reduce the reload time drastically. I suspect most will want to do that. The Tu-2 relies on its speed to make a bombing run and then get clear of danger before coming back for another pass. The G4M2 won't be able to do that, so you're going to have to rely on its ruggedness and its defensive armament to survive for that second pass. More experienced players will probably already be anticipating what sort of build they'll use on the G4M2 given that knowledge. Given what I've just said about leaning on the plane's ruggedness, you can see pretty good figures for hit points, damage resistance and fire resistance here. Incidentally, these have all been improved after initial testing, but at least as far as hit points and damage resistance is concerned, it's not a B-32. I think you're likely to want to improve this plane's survivability as much as you can. Even though you lose the bonus characteristics by doing so, if you opt for reinforcement equipment, I'd take it up to ultimate level and fully calibrate it, even if the plane is stock. I flew a lot of battles during testing with equipment of this kind, but only at the improved level, and it wasn't a pleasant experience. Using ultimate level fully calibrated equipment will make the experience much nicer. That brings me to the airspeed figures, and they're not good. Technically, the G4M2 has a higher rating than the B-32, but you'll notice it actually has a worse maximum boost speed. Fortunately, it has 60 seconds of boost, so travelling between sectors won't be quite so painful, but if you use that boost whilst attempting to keep a pursuer at distance, or not stall when you're pitching up, you may find you're reduced to lumbering slowly around the map for parts of battles. You should also see that it will be rare that you'll be able to shake off a pursuer using speed. You'll normally need the guns to deter it. The manoeuvrability figures are good for a bomber. You should be able to use the G4M2's agility to be able to adjust quickly to a pursuer's manoeuvring and keep your guns on it. You may even make less agile heavy fighters fly past you. The altitude performance is not good, but that didn't matter to me, as I'll explain shortly. Finally, for what it's worth, the power to weight ratios are the best in class, which suggests the G4M2 may accelerate quickly, but it's a slow bomber, so I'm not sure how much that is going to be useful to you. Given this set of characteristics, good defensive armament, reasonable ruggedness, lack of speed, and unexciting altitude performance, plus the need to two-pass sectors because of the small payload, I opted to build the G4M2 like a tank, fly it low, remember that you can shoot straight up at busy enemy targets, and use the defensive armament to keep me alive long enough for a second pass through the sector. If you're flying the plane stock with this kind of build, a reminder, I suggest you take the equipment to ultimate level and calibrate it fully if you can. I'm going to talk about the build I chose for the G4M2, but before I do that, I'll show you the bonuses for the paint scheme that's awarded with the aircraft. The camouflage gives 5% aircraft experience, the nose 5% crew experience, and the emblem 2% crew experience. And these are all standard values, so no surprises here. So, here's how I approached building the G4M2. It's now in specialised configuration, so I have all of the equipment and consumable slots available, though most of my testing was done with the plane unspecialised. When you obtain it, you'll see the following. There are 5 equipment slots, 1 each on the cockpit, the airframe, the engine, the turret, and the outboard weapon. That last one is locked, and that's a nuisance. It means you'll have to wait the full 35 seconds for your bombs to reload after a first pass through a sector, and the plane is vulnerable to attack during that time. There are only 4 consumable slots, 1 each on the cockpit, the engine, the turret, and the outboard weapon. Unfortunately, this time the turret is locked, so you will be able to mount the improved fragmentation consumable or one of the gold munitions to improve the bombs. Now I've popped the plane into the specialised configuration, and you can see this build is about protecting the pilot, making the plane more rugged, improving the defensive weaponry, and getting the reload on the bombs down to the minimum. All the equipment you see here is of the standard type, no experimental or special project equipment has been used, but all of it is at an ultimate level and fully calibrated. If you can, I recommend you do this for this plane, though you may be constrained by credits, materials, and a wish to expend those on a different plane. Let's get into the detail. There are only 2 choices of equipment for the cockpit slot, cockpit armour and the gun side, and that's an easy choice to make since the plane carries no forward-firing weapons in the World of Warplanes team's view, So I've mounted the cockpit armour. You can see lots of positive effects here. Both the pilot and the gunner are more resistant to injury, the plane resists fire better, and I've gained some hit points. Adverse effects on the manoeuvrability, 2 of them don't bother me. You can see I've selected bonuses that give me the extra resistance to fire and the extra hit points. The bonuses I haven't selected are in grey, and of those I might be interested in increasing still further the pilot's ability to resist injury. The choices for the airframe are reinforced skin, reinforced airframe, lightweight wing frame, and polished skin. I'm not so bothered about preserving or interested in increasing the plane's manoeuvrability, so I don't favour the reinforced skin or the lightweight wing frame. My feeling is the plane is too slow to really benefit from a polished skin, but I haven't tried one at ultimate level fully calibrated, so I'm going to keep it in mind as a possible alternative for future testing. What I wanted was to try to keep the plane in the air for as long as possible, so I opted for the reinforced airframe. You can see the benefits at the top of the panel: 23% more hit points, increased tolerance to damage from flak, and yet more resistance to fire, again at the cost of some manoeuvrability. I selected bonuses that provided the latter 2 benefits, plus a further increase in hit points. The other bonuses in grey, which help with wing and tail resistance to damage and manoeuvrability, don't fit into my scheme of making this plane a tank. The choices for the engine are engine armour protection, combined injection boost system, lightweight power unit, and uprated engine. Again, since I'm not interested in increasing the manoeuvrability of the plane, though that might be rather a fun build if not really an effective one, and I'm not trying to increase the speed of the plane, that rules out the latter 3 choices. If I experiment with a speed build in the future, then, remembering the rather poor boost speed, probably I opt for the boost system rather than the uprated engine. That leaves the engine armour protection as my choice, and the benefits at the top of the panel show a 50% increase in the engine's resistance to damage, more tolerance to damage from AA guns, and more hit points. I've lost a bit of maximum boost speed, which isn't welcome, but a necessary compromise. The bonus characteristics were selected to give the extra tolerance to flak and the extra hit points. All of the other characteristics are worth considering, and you may prefer one or more of them. On the turret, you can mount turret armour protection to reduce the chance of injury to the gunner, a turret gun lane drive for faster aiming in automatic mode, I think the aiming time for most planes is a couple of seconds, and a turret gun sight. I've already increased the ability of the gunner to resist injury through the use of cockpit armour, and I'm satisfied with that, and I feel aiming more quickly in automatic mode is something of a marginal benefit. And that alone would incline me to the gun sight, but since I want to increase the range of the guns in manual mode, and the range is already good, this is my strong preference. You can see at the top of the panel I've added a whopping 25% to the range of fire when I'm controlling the gunner, and more chance of causing critical damage to pursuers. This gives me the best chance of deterring them, or, if they persist, wrecking their plane so that they can't get near enough to shoot me. This comes at the cost of an increased chance of gunner injury, but I've compensated for that elsewhere, and also here, as you'll see in a moment. The bonus characteristics were selected to give that increased likelihood of critical damage to enemy planes, plus reduce the adverse effect on the gunner's resistance to injury. Amongst the other characteristics, another 5% range would have been nice, and some of you may think quicker aiming in manual mode is good to have. I haven't tried that and must one day. For the outboard weaponry, the bombs, there's a bomb sight for increased bombing accuracy, strengthened hardpoints for a swifter reload of the bombs, a rocket sight that is obviously of no value here, and aerodynamic pylons that offset the effect of those on the aircraft's speed. I've settled on taking the G4M2 low to bomb, so I don't need the bomb sight's accuracy, and certainly I don't welcome the worsened reloading time. Though I might consider the aerodynamic pylons in future testing of a speed build, I think I would always regret having the bombs load more slowly, so, not surprisingly, I've settled on the strengthened hardpoints. That's given me a more than 30% reduction in the reload time for the bombs, which is welcome, because it's also a 30% reduction in the time the plane is idle and vulnerable to attack. There's a slight increase in bombing accuracy, I don't think that's significant, and the cost of all this is losing cruise and maximum boost speed. It's true that I'm making an already fairly slow plane even slower with this build, which is unfortunate, but largely unavoidable. I used the bonus characteristics to further improve the reloading time and to improve accuracy, plus I clawed back a little of the cruise speed. I could equally as well have chosen to claw back some boost speed, and the two characteristics related to rockets are of no use here. Turning to consumables, I've selected the first aid dressing package. I've 2 crew members to heal, and I've raised the fire resistance level to 92, as you'll see later, so that seems to be an obvious choice. I've selected engine cooling for 10 seconds of extra boost. The English text for the consumable has never been clear, of course, and on this plane I wish it did, and for all I know it may very well do so, improve the cooldown rate. This may seem an odd choice when I could use improved mixture control to claw back some of the speed I've lost with this build, but my experience was that even with 60 plus 10 seconds of boost, I was short of it often enough to want that extra 10 seconds. However, the improved mixture control wouldn't be a bad choice either. As for the engine restart bottle, if you've lost an engine, it's likely you're busy fighting an attacking plane with your gunner, and putting the engine back in isn't going to help much. Controversially, I've mounted gold ammunition on the turret for the maximum chance of causing critical damage to pursuers. I think this plane needs every ounce of defensive capability you can give it. At the very least, you should mount the universal turret ammunition. If you can afford it, mount the improved fragmentation consumable to increase the damage on the bombs. Those of you willing to spend more gold will likely use the heavy warhead. I've declined the opportunity. 1 gold consumable on a tier 7 plane is plenty for me. I've brought up the pilot skills panel first, and for this reinforcement or tank build, I'd go about assigning pilot skills something like this. First, I'd improve the damage potential of the bombs with Demolition Expert, then increase the effect of reinforcement equipment with Protection Expert. I'd address pilot injury battle tested, and the extra controllability when the plane is damaged is also welcome. Then I'd embark on the journey through Engine Gurus 1 and 2. Beyond that, I've been using resilience, but I wonder if evasive target, which applies when you change the pitch of the aircraft, also roll, which is less likely to be a factor with this plane, might be worth trying if you, like me, pitch bombers and ground attackers up when an enemy is pursuing you in order to get more guns on them. I'm not sure that skill would work. If it doesn't, a combination of cruise flight and aerobatics expert may be interesting. For a speed build, something I may test in the future, I'd follow much the same path to skills, with one key difference. I'd drop Protection Expert in favour of Aerodynamics Expert. Now I've switched to the gunner, and I've a relatively tried and tested path for skills, starting with Defensive Fire, then Precision Gunner, and then embarking on the long slog of building towards Ballistics Expert, through Endurance, Vigilance, and Quick Reflexes, in any order you prefer, and then dropping those so I can go through Armourer immediately and obtain Ballistics Expert. After that, a long way in the future, I'd acquire the other skills in the order Quick Reflexes, Endurance, and Vigilance, but any order of acquisition there is fine. Here we have a spreadsheet reflecting the effects of my choices on equipment level, calibration, pilot skills, and so on the base figures of the aircraft. Now, you've seen those before in the aircraft statistics section. Here they are again in columns C and D. The effects of my choices are in columns E and F. The difference between them in absolute terms is in column G, and in percentage terms in column H. As a reminder, we have cockpit armour, reinforced airframe, engine armour protection, turret gun sight, and strengthened hardpoints, all ultimate level equipment, all fully calibrated. There's no improvement in the rating on the guns, because that reflects the forward firing armament, and there isn't any here, but there is a significant improvement on the defensive turrets. We now have a range in manual mode of 3,765 feet. That's nearly 1,000 feet improvement, or 35%. In automatic mode, it's going to be 3,000 feet. This is going to be so much more useful for deterring pursuers, especially at long range, especially if you can keep them at long range, although remember this aircraft is slow, so you may not be able to do that. Down here we can see there's a 95% chance of it causing critical damage. Part of that is coming from the gold. If you drop the gold munitions, then that goes down to 75% from memory. The aiming speed of the turret is increased by 50%, therefore it should be 1 second instead of 2 if I was right about the 2 seconds earlier in the video. And there's an increase in burst length of 50%. I've never known a turret to stop firing, so I'm not sure how useful that is. On the ordnance, we have some big improvements. The rating's gone up to 51. The damage has gone up by 21% to 24,200. The reload time, or resupply as it's called in the game, has come down to a very useful 24 seconds. This is important, and this is going to make the aircraft feel a lot better at taking sectors. And the damage radius of the bombs has gone up to a rating of 271. So altogether, much more usable bombs, which can be used much more quickly, and that's nice. We can also see down here there's a 5% increase in bombing accuracy, which, given I bomb at a fairly low altitude anyway, is probably not going to make that much difference. Now, we'd be looking for a big improvement in survivability with the reinforcement build. Here it is. 62 is the rating now. That's nominally a 59% improvement in the survivability of the aircraft. It's green across the board. Hit points up to 2072, over 50% improvement. Damage resistance up to 59, which is 11% improvement. And the fire resistance is up to, I calculate, 91. It says 92 in the game. It's a 10% improvement, whichever it is. That's all very welcome. And down here, we've got some other great effects. 70% engine resistance to damage, an improvement. The pilot is less likely to take injury by 72%, the gunner by 35% or thereabouts. We've got 25% tolerance to damage from flak or AA, and a 10% tolerance to fire damage, all great effects. Now that comes at the cost of losing airspeed, unfortunately, so the rating's gone down to 38. We've lost 6 miles an hour of cruise speed, which isn't so bad, I suppose, but we've lost 30 miles an hour of what was already a poor boost maximum speed. If you want to compensate for that by trying a speed build, then of course you're going to make the aircraft much more fragile, and I don't think with the speed build you're going to be able to get away from aircraft to make that worthwhile, but it'd probably be worth testing. Other effects on the airspeed, you've got 5% acceleration with boost activated and without boost as an improvement there. There's also a slight adverse effect on the manoeuvrability. It's down from 23 to 21. Turn time is still the same, but the roll rate is now 46. Probably won't notice that too much. You've also lost to 3.8% yaw manoeuvrability. Again, probably won't notice it too much. And then finally, the altitude performance. Well, it's virtually unchanged, but we've lost 2 feet per second climb somewhere. Now, that's with the pilot, as I've just discussed in the pilot skills section. What we'll do now is we'll go and have a look at the performance evaluation of the plane. I actually have 3 performance evaluations, or rather 2 and a bit evaluations for you here. My performance evaluations usually take place over 25 battles, spread out to take in different parts of the day and without any of them being in a flight. The first 2 here conform to that style, but you can see the last one is in progress and only 7 battles have been fought. I'll explain why I ran out of time as I go along. The first performance evaluation was for the aircraft as it was originally configured, back in mid-July, so it's of limited relevance because the plane's characteristics were subsequently changed. However, I'd like to draw your attention to the win rate of 68% when the battle tier was evenly split between Tier 7 and Tier 8 battles. I will also highlight that the World of Warplanes team specifically asked that the plane be tested in stock configuration with a partially trained crew. I used all the equipment you've seen earlier in the video, with the exception of the strengthened hard points, that slot not being available in the stock configuration, but only at an improved level and without any calibration. The crew members were limited to 6 points each, so the first pilot had the first 3 skills I mentioned earlier, and the gunner the first 2. A few days ago, the World of Warplanes team put through a micro-patch changing the aircraft, so the second evaluation was hurriedly put together using the same level of equipment and crew training. There's a nasty low win rate of 52% here, but you'll see that 72% of the battles were at Tier 8. That is a bad set of battles. Nonetheless, most of the figures here, personal points, rank, number of ground targets destroyed, and so on, were improved from the original evaluation, which is significant given the usually more hostile environments in which I flew the plane. Even so, it's clear a stock plane struggles in Tier 8 battles, and that's why I recommend, if you can, that you take your equipment immediately to ultimate level and calibrate it as much as you can, even though this deactivates the bonus characteristics. The final evaluation is with the plane in specialised configuration. The equipment has been taken to ultimate level and fully calibrated, and the strength and hard points have been added in. The crew has been fully trained too. The win rate is horrid at less than 30%, but it's only 7 battles, and you can see 5 defeats on the spin here. It's also true that most of these battles have been at tier 8. That said, if you look at the averages, you can see that there's a strong indication that the plane is now performing more powerfully. Personal points are up, aerial target damage is up, damage to ground targets is up, and so are several other indicators. All that said, my impression is that, even with the aircraft kitted out and tweaked to the maximum, it's not going to be more than an average performer, particularly in Tier 8 battles where it will struggle to defend itself. Now it's time to see the G4M2 in battle, and the map for the forthcoming battle is Plateau. It's a sandstorm variant with 5 sectors in a squashed and tilted number 5 die face pattern. And what we have around a central garrison, itself a make-weight usually, but of course tactically it's providing access to all of the other sectors. On one axis we have 2 mining plants, one near each spawn. These are the strategically important sectors on the map. Not only do they give you the 3 influence points or resources every 5 seconds, but they grant an additional 80 resources every 2 minutes. On the other axis we have 2 repair air bases, one near each spawn and also importantly one near each mining plant. So if you can get hold of the airbase near the enemy's mining plant, you can get there a lot more quickly to deliver attacks. Strategically, you want to try and hold your mining plant for longer than the enemy holds theirs, and indeed, if you can, get hold of their airbase, this airbase here, and launch attacks against their mining plant and try and take it off them. Order of battle. I'm top tier, which is good news. I'm with the ME265 ground attacker, and then I have 2 tier 6s, a BF-109F fighter and a Tornado multi-role. The enemy has a Junkers 288A bomber, but also a heavy, a Ticat and F7F. They have 2 tier 6 fighters, the Spitfire 5B-IM, that's the Iron Maiden version, and a Yak-1M. So relatively even, I would say. With the ME265, perhaps we've got an advantage because we've got more ground attacking power on a 2 mining plant map. Let's see how the battle panned out. I immediately turn for the mining plant, which is off to my left, and I'm going to go down low. 2 reasons: that improves the accuracy of the bombing, and secondly, it gets me below the high level AA or flak at the plant. So we're going to get down to something like between 1,500 and 2,000 feet. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try and take out the 2 50-point targets first with a pair of bombs each, and then if the plant hasn't been taken by something else by then, I will swing back with 4 bombs and take out the power plant. So here we come, the first 50-point target. 3 buildings and 3 fuel depots, as I call them. 2 bombs there. And now we're going for this set of cooling towers and fuel depots. 2 more bombs there, and swing away. Of course, air defence aircraft don't exist at mining plants, so I'm not going to be hampered here. But unfortunately, I failed to entirely destroy the second target, which is a bit of a nuisance. And now you can see why the reload is important, because I'm back in, I'm almost reloaded already, so I can get that target and then perhaps drop 3 bombs on the power plant, which has been partially destroyed, fortunately for me. Go 1 bomb on the 50-point target, 1 bomb near these chimneys, and then another bomb near this cooling tower and fuel depot. As it happens, something else was destroyed. I didn't get that target, but I would have flipped it had it been necessary. And so we're now going to proceed slowly across the middle. We will drop bombs, because we'll have them, but we won't stay there to flip the sector. We'll just try and give my team an advantage for taking it, and we'll try and get to their plant. Keeping a lookout ahead of me to see what planes are there. I can shoot forwards with the turrets, I will if I need to. The enemy have nearly taken this sector. I don't know if I'm going to be able to hold them up. I can't. They've already taken it. There's going to be no point in dropping bombs, and now I've actually got to get through this sector with enemy aircraft present. So now you can see I'm going to shoot out the side of the aircraft. There's that blind spot I mentioned by the side of the tail coming into effect. Now I begin to pitch up. Try and get both 20mm guns on the Spitfire. You can see it's rapidly going down with hit points there, and it's destroyed. Key 102 bot takes up my gunner, so I put him back in with the first aid dressing package, and being a bot, he's deterred by the criticals that I've done to him. Now fortunately, I've been able to get through to the plant. It wasn't necessarily guaranteed, and if that had been a tier 8 battle, I'm not sure I would have made it. As it was, I was able to dispose of the tier 6 fighter. Now, more of a challenge here. I've started with only around 700 hit points, and here comes the Tiger Cat. So again, I'm going to pitch up, try and get the 20mm on him. This is tight, he's going down quickly. Now he's beginning to hit me, and I've also been set on fire. He gets me just before I destroy him. He had less than 30 hit points left there, so I did an enormous amount of damage to that Tiger Cat. Now fortunately, we have actually got the airbase near to the plant, so I can spawn there and start attacking again. We've spawned at that airbase, and now we're heading towards the plant. Now we're 3 sectors to 2 up at the moment, but you'll notice that our plant is under severe threat. Looking around with the turrets. I'm going to use the same approach here, go for the 50-point targets first, and then go for the power plant. Now, one of the 50-point targets is already damaged, but there's enough there for me not to want to take a chance on 1 bomb, so I'll drop 2. Now the second 50-point target comes into view. Got the second set of bombs, and this time we've got both 50-point targets. Now here comes the Yak 1M, and there goes the Yak 1M. Probably a smart decision. I know he's probably turned for the ground attacker. Had he come for me, I don't think it would have lasted very long. See if I can put a few shots into him. See, firing forwards and downwards, but then I hit the blind spots. He's got the ground attacker, that's a nuisance. And now I'm in position to bomb at this power plant. One there, one in the middle of the buildings, one in the centre of the target, and one more by the chimneys towards the end. And that's a perfect bombing run, we've got it. Now I can shoot at the Yak 1M. Probably got a cliff in front of me, so I'm going to climb steeply anyway. And in fact, I've smashed into it. That probably is an advantage, because now I can spawn at the original spawn point. Mining plant on our side will probably fall, and I can go there. Back at the original spawn point, as I said, the mining plant did indeed fall. You can see it in red there. So for the 3rd time in this game, we're going to go in and attack it, and we'll take the same approach, try and take the 50-point targets out, and then perhaps try and take the power plants out. Looking around for potential threats. Get a little bit lower to get below the AA. Now we're lining up the first target. Let's hope I don't leave anything behind on either of these targets this time. 2 bombs. Heading for the next one. Just edge to the side slightly here to try and get the bombs in the gap. This time I get the entire target. So a quick reload, 24 seconds. Feels like an eternity when you've got the full 35 seconds. And of course, if it's a contested sector, 35 seconds of being attacked by the enemy is much worse than 24 seconds. Now we swung round, we're nearly reloaded, we're coming for the power plant. Use all 4 bombs to try and make sure of it. One in the middle of this building, one in the centre of the target, one in the middle of that building, one over the cooling tower. Typical pattern. And we failed. We left something behind, and now we've got the F7F again. But he's on half health this time. I'm on full health. It's not such an advantage for him. Pitching up, just keeping him out of the blind spot, whittling him down. He's not doing that much damage to me this time because he can't climb very quickly. He's out of range more or less, and in killing him, I flipped the plant. So thank you very much, F7F. I know that wasn't your intention, but you actually helped there. Now we've got both plants, but before I go into the centre, you can see I'm now shooting almost directly upwards at the Spitfire 5B, and down that goes as well. So I was looking for a target of opportunity here because we're in a good situation so far as the sectors are concerned. 2 bombs there on that shed complex. I'm going to try one here if I remember correctly. And then I start looking at aircraft I can shoot. There's a Key 102, but unfortunately it gets away from me. P-38F is flying away, but I'll put some damage into him. I dropped all the bombs whilst I was at it. I'm still looking for targets here to try and take the sector, and in fact we have taken it. And now we've won the game. And that's about as good as it gets in the G4M2, I would suggest. Now I'll take you through the battle results. We can see from the centre it's a 3 chevron battle or a grade 3 bomber, and that grossed nearly 145,000 credits, or silver if you prefer. There's no premium time on this press account, but had it been active that would have added another 73,000 credits or thereabouts. We can see that the expenses, 18,000 credits, that's for the aircraft repairs plus consumables, they're not prepaid on the press account. Also 15 gold for turret ammunition, trying to make it a little bit more pokey. If we look at the XP, we can see that the total is 3,625, the base is 3,453, 172 coming from bonuses, another 1,700 or so would have come from a premium account. 181 free experience. A premium account would have added 86, and there's a couple of achievements here, a Winged Legend and a Thunder. To go to the personal score tab, we can see that none of the class specific missions were complete. The one for capture points was 4/5, only 2/5 for sections of ground targets destroyed, that's going to be a common feature, and 4 sectors captured was 4/5 complete as well, and that's why it's only 3 chevrons. Personal points of 16,515, 4 sectors captured as mentioned a moment ago, 3 aerial targets destroyed, saw me jousting with the F7F a couple of times, damage to aerial targets of 1,756, criticals 13 there, lost the aircraft twice, going to have to expect that, 580 capture points received, and that was all of course for attacking the sectors. Damage to ground targets 57,857 across 10 targets destroyed. If we look at the team score tab, that was enough for first place on my team, both by chevrons and personal points. Would have been the case on the enemy team as well. I think it's fair to say that the scores here were somewhat on the average side, and in fact clearly this gentleman was either disconnected or quit the battle early. Best of the bunch on the enemy side was that F7F, with whom I jousted a couple of times. Happy with the victory here. That concludes this review of the Mitsubishi G4M2, the first Japanese bomber in the game. Bearing in mind that this is a reward plane for a wargaming anniversary, and that, typically, those haven't been strong aircraft in the past, I don't think it's a surprise that it's not an overwhelmingly powerful monster. And that's a good thing. It is going to be a challenge to play, and some of you will relish that, whereas others may find it off-putting. If you're watching in August 2024 and you plan to grind for this plane, let me wish you the best of luck with your endeavours. Well, I hope you found this video helpful, and that, if you did, you'll come and see my future content. Until the next time, this is the Noble Q, signing out.